How's that?
That's fine.
Right.
Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I wouldn't believe half of what you've just been telling you.
True.
Anyway, so let's now look at the Earth energy system known as the geodetic system, which was discovered by Guy Underwood in the 1940s and 50s. I'd like to thank the Council for giving me the opportunity of presenting the geodetic thesis to such an august body. What I'd like to do, I know this is unusual, I'd like to dedicate this presentation to Guy Underwood, who I think is one of the greatest dowsers of all time, and an ex-member of the BSD. So who was Guy Underwood? He died at the age of 81 in 1964, and he was a barrister by profession. He was a man of many talents. He was an accomplished artist, a very great sculptor. He was an archaeologist, albeit amateur, who made several excellent discoveries. He was a dowser, and no mean water dowser, who later graduated into earth energies. But he had a very inventive mind. To him, the ordinary wire rod or the air rod were crude and clumsy instruments. So what he devised was a series of instruments that he called the ultra-sensitive range of instruments. One which I could never understand was the Oasis rod. The second was the one he swore by, which he had patents on. He called it the geodetic rod. A little bit of steel, a little clip, and some piano wire. But he swore by that, and in the 1950s he marketed the thing for 8 and 6pence with a book. My favourite tenor. And he also, believe it or not, there's more than that. He invented a rod that would light up in the darkness. And that's what he called dedicated dowsing. When I was young, and courted my wife, there was a band called Andre Costellanos and his orchestra. Now those who went life's departure line like me will remember that. But his great hit was Dancing in the Dark. And I'd love to do a dance with that one. But dancing in the dark is one thing, but dowsing in the dark is something else. There's more. He also invented a rod that would give an audible signal when you hit the target. So you'd walk around, go bzzz, got it, bzzz, got it. And that would probably go down like cyanide with the hard of hearing dowsers, or the deaf dowsers. Especially the dowser said to his friend, I got my new deaf aid in today. He says, what type is it? He says, 4:30. Anyway, Guy started off dowsing when he was a councillor in a small village, and the water supply was running out. So they gave him the task of finding another water supply. So he hired what he called the village dowsers. You know, he called them the village dowsers, the ones with the naturals. And anyway, he was amazed at the speed and the uncanny accuracy with which this dowser actually found the water supply for the village. So after that, he then made himself a set of rods, or a wire rod. He started dowsing where the dowser had found the stuff. By practicing on that and going further afield, he then, of course, became quite proficient. And he actually wrote a whole series of articles for the BSD in the period 1942 to 1945 on the theory and practice of water dowsing. He was a very accomplished water dowser. In fact, George Applegate, are you here, George, today? No? George is very well known to our society, or the BSD Society, as the honorary water finder, or water advisor on water finding. Now, he dowsed with Guy for 20 years. And for 20 years, he was watching Guy, who had transformed from a water dowser to dowsing for energy. And George was the one who actually published Guy's book. Because with all the findings that Guy was having on Earth energies, he couldn't get them published. Nobody would touch them with a barge pole. Because if you remember, in the 1940s and 50s, Earth energies wasn't on the spiritual agenda at all. So by the time he died, he was an embittered man at 81. But George promised him on his deathbed that he would get the book published, and the book was called The Pattern of the Past. Now, we've got a lot to owe to George Applegate, because, one, I wouldn't be standing here. Two, the book would never have been published. And three, all the stuff would be consigned to the grave, and we'd all be waiting for the next Guy Underwood to come along and show us all these discoveries. So thank you for George Applegate, great guy. But believe it or not, he said all his life when he dowsed with Guy, he would see Guy saying, "Christ, there's halos around here. There's a great geospiral there. Look at this," and he'd do it. And even after Guy's death, George said, "I really had a conclusion in my heart. I was making these things that was thought constructs and then finding them." Because George stuck to water and oil, nothing else. But anyway, after a while after the guy's death, George bought a limited edition of a book from America, and there in all the glory was all that what Guy Underwood had found. And the guy hadn't even known about Guy Underwood, actually. So that's a bit of background on Guy. And now let's look at the Earth energy system. He called it the geodetic system, and he found that it covered the planet like a vast matrix, right around the planet from pole to pole. And there's three basic types of flows. He called the one the water line, the first flow, and this is where he starts confusing people. That's what he called the water line. A small water line has three hairlines, or a triad. If it gets larger than about 3 feet, that each triad then multiplies by 3, then you get what he call a large water line.
That's the last week.
Yes, that's an idea. Could you guys? Dowsing. We'll find that when he talks about water lines, this is not a water line at all, it's an energy line. The next one he found was a track line. This was a double triad. So if you passed across it, you get 6 reactions. And he found that trails like the Ridgeway Trail, the Caribou Trails, they're all following what he called the track lines. Then lastly, he found the largest but the most popular one was the aquastat. It contained 4 triads. So if you went over it with a rod, you would get 12 reactions. So 3 for that one, 6 for that one, and 12 for that one. And again, he uses the word aquastat, meaning water, and these things got nothing to do with water, as we shall see. And that's why many people who read the Path of the Past are totally confused when they put it down, because they think they're following water courses, and they're not. Now these 3 are energy lines. We'll either go through a winding course, such as that, undulatingly. They can go zigzag. They can go in what he called folded loops as they progress, sometimes in multi-loops, or they can go like hairpin bends. And this is the way they progress. And also the next one, there's another form of progression. And you find, this is what he called branch spirals. There is the main line, throws off spirals to either side. Next one, Jeff. The guy found also that the energy lines, the water line, the track line, and the aquastat, were what he called reticulates. Those would cross over like that and move on, making folded sort of geometries as they went along. So the top is a water line reticulating, this is a track line reticulating, and lastly there's an aquastat reticulating. And we'll find this appearing in some of the Earth energy diagrams. Now here's where the moment of truth comes in about water lines. The 3 lines that we saw, the 3 energy flows, could form into a series of spectacular and exotic patterns, of which this was one. It's called a primary halo. It also appears in multiple degrees, and it can be often hundreds of feet in diameter. It's what we call positive on the outside, but it's always accompanied by a negative shadow. Now what Guy found, and this is amazing how he found out all the nitty-gritty, he would find that during the day, the negative shadow would change places with the positive. They'll jump in and change places for no apparent reason. It might stay like that for an hour, then it switch back, the negative shadow then come inside. So almost in multiples of 3. Now, and this is also a water line, by the way. So you can see that water would never follow 3 concentric halos. It could never do this with 6 sort of halos. So we're looking at a water line again. So we're not looking at water, we're looking at pure energy. This is what Guy called a secondary halo, and it also appears in multiples of 6. The strange thing he found out about this one was that during the day, for no apparent reason, it might jump from 6 to 12 up to a maximum of 48 and back down to 6 again. So what forces at work to make these things be doing this? And we've checked all this out, by the way, the Wyvern Society, and they actually do this, they don't multiply. Even so that line, it's got to have reference points to keep measuring. But there is the energy plan of the Stonehenge region. And what you're looking at is the power point of the Stonehenge region. All the power comes from this point, and away they're going, all the way, right down here. And now you find the reticulations, as I mentioned. Now the avenue which leads from Stonehenge is also following a reticulating path. And that's 1.5 miles, that's just one of them. So hold it again, Jeff. Now let's keep it on. So in selecting this particular point for the megalithic flagship, Stonehenge, they could have put it there or there. They could have put it on a hilltop so everybody could see when they passed. But no, they picked that particular spot because that was the power point for the whole region. So there's nothing arbitrary about the selection of the sites. Because what you'll find is what Guy found out was, first of all, the geodetic system in itself. Now, having found the geodetic system, that should have assured him a place amongst the greats for all time. But then he discovered two seminal things about it. One, that the Neolithic and the Bronze Age masons were actually using the earth energies. First of all, they'd site it according to the power point of the region. Then every individual stone of the monument would be laid precisely in accordance with the geodetic earth system. And he called that geodetic engineering. And you find it right across the Neolithic Age and the Bronze Age. But the second seminal thing he discovered was, he started looking at the churches, the medieval churches, the cathedrals. And what he found was that all the churches and cathedrals were being designed just like this, were being geodetic engineered. And they all had their Masonic design canons, similar to these people. We find here at Stonehenge that the altar stone is on a geospiral. You find in all the churches and cathedrals, the altars are on geospirals. Which means that what was happening was that this special knowledge, this geodetic knowledge, was being handed down from the Neolithics to the Bronze Age to the Iron Age, and the final custodians of the knowledge was the European Masonic Brotherhood. And this they kept to themselves as a special secret. That was the Masonic secret, geodetic engineering. And so secret was it that they kept it from the church leaders themselves, because the church had found out that having these pagan practices, they would have drummed them out. But they kept it as a closed shop. So there's the PowerPoint, and an example of Guy's surveying. Next one, Jeff. Now here's the altar stone here at Stonehenge. That's the cross one. Now notice it's on a geospiral with 7 coils. It has the necklaces around it. A very powerful one, that. Now the fact that there's a geospiral there means that the altar stone has been placed over a blind spring. Design canon number 1 for them and also for the masons. Next one, Jeff. So see how carefully they've been planning all this, the Bronze Age mason and the Neolithics. Now here's an example. I'm just showing this. These are water lines encircling the entire region, and this particular water line goes up to the heel stone here and makes a double loop around it. It starts here, it goes right around. And I'm submitting that water underground would never follow patterns like that and then end up with the two perfect circles. Again, we're looking at energy as opposed to water. But I'll show you water later at Stonehenge. Here's another example of a water line which is coming in, or it's coming from the barrow, the south barrow. It's coming around and it's setting the geometry for the inner horseshoes, or the inner little horseshoe. These are the main triathlons, which are in a horseshoe formation, but echoing them is a smaller formation, the minor horseshoe. So it's really setting the scene for the minor set of stones in the horseshoe. And by the way, we're only going to see a very few. There's hundreds of these that Guy left me, or the Guy left. And he made 2 visits to the site. Upside down, Jeff? Well done. Well, here you have another water line coming from the southwest station, and what it's doing is it's setting now the geometry of the outer horseshoe. We had another one setting the inner, but this was now setting the geometry of that. Now that we're seeing all this, implicit in all of this is that these guys could dowse. They were dowsers. Either dowsing it naturally, or some might be able to see the energy, I don't know. But now you're seeing the application of dowsing to building things like Stonehenge. Next one, Jeff. Here's another example of the main site. You have what you call the stations at Stonehenge. You've got station number 1, 2, 3, 4. Now if you notice that the selection for the stations have been made because here at this station you've got a power point, which is a series of halos. You've got another one here, you've got another one there, and this one has got distorted. It wasn't like that. It was being distorted by the other geodetic energies in its proximity. It's making it into a kidney shape. So even the stations have been allocated the positions according to earth energy, and even the ditch in the bank have been set by the water lines and the aquastats. The inner one's an aquastat, the outer one's dotted or a water line. So that whole thing has been set by the aquastats and water lines. Next one, Jeff. Now look at this. This is another survey. It's a measure of the Guy. This is the Earth energy pattern at this particular point. And what it's finding is that this one, that one, 28, 27, 30, they're all in these enclosures. So it's discovering that everything has been made according to this energy pattern. So even the inner rings of stone and the outer ones, they're all definitely in enclosures. Is it the, been made to measure for them, basically. But what a survey. Think of doing that one even. Just a small one. Now, here's an example of real water. Because the blind spring in this region is generating a whole series of about 9, 10 water lines. This is actually water flowing. So you can actually detect this, basically. And what Guy found was that all of the ancient sites were connected with water. Water was a very holy symbol in the ancient religions, as it is now in the modern religions, like the holy water of the Ganges and holy water in the churches. So they always tried to have a site where water was present. So we found that the altar stone was on the blind spring itself, and now you have the radiating points of water coming out. So when you dowse for this, you're dowsing actually for underground fissured streams. That's totally different to the other water line. Next one, Jim. Now here again, the heel stone, which is outside the main Stonehenge block, again it's sited on a blind spring, which has 49 coil geospiral. That's the maximum you can get in the geospiral system. So again, its position wasn't arbitrary, it was set by the geospiral. And the strange thing about this geospiral here, if you want to dowse for it, there's 49 coils. So from here to here, from the outside to the inside, I would traverse 49 coils. But it's made up of an aquastat, that particular one. And an aquastat, as we saw, has 12 lines. So we'll have 49 coils, and each coil will have 12 lines. So we've got to traverse 49 times 12 lines if you want to dowse from there to there. Now that's very, very onerous. So what do you do with the aquastat? Hold it, Kev. If I'm going to have 49 times 12 from there to there, then what you do is with the aquastat, you say, I'm going to tune in only to the first line of energy, I'm going to tune out the rest. So by doing that, by deliberately detuning from the 11, then you're going to get the 49 reactions across there instead of 49 times 12. It's a shortcut which, makes it a less onerous task. Right, Jeff?
Hello, Jeff.
This is an interesting one. It's just a little detail even of the Stonehenge region. You have the ditch here, you have a double pit, and from it is coming a 6-fold water line. It's a double water line. It's going through the Aubrey hole number 1, and it's going through the toe of the heels of the slaughter stone. Then it goes from there up to the heel stone, then they all merge into one, and move around it, and go onto the ditch in the bank. The fascinating thing about this one is that there were 6 notches here. 6 oval notches about 1.5 inches long and about half an inch deep, which the masons had deliberately cut into it. And what we're saying was somebody in the future understand what we're trying to do. It's all to do with earth energies. And here's clue number 1, basically. Of course, this lay hidden until Guy Underwood came along and started cracking the codes. But after years and years of doing all this, I think he began to think like a megalithic man. And so if he saw something like that, he'd be onto it in a flash. But there's more than that. Next one, Jeff. Now, they call it the slaughter stone because there's all these basins scoured into it, and they thought the basins were there to catch the sacrificial blood. But no. What Guy Underwood found was this is an ordnance survey map. Never mind about the 6 notches that we saw up here. Each of these things that are scoured out very carefully are points where there's small geospirals. So what it is, it's a map of the geospiral energies at that particular point. But there's more, because along the side, you've got 17 notches. It hasn't shown the energies, but it has here. So these 17 notches, marked E and what have you, they're the entry points which they've marked for the aquastats coming in. So what you've got there, a complete ordnance survey map of a highly complex energy system all enclosed in that particular area. Till this guy was something else, Guy Underwood. Now I'm showing you this. This is the geometry of John Martin, who's taking a master's in sacred geometry. He's done about 6 or 7 of these outer octagonal geometries, pentagonal geometries. And the only reason why I'm showing it to you is this whole thing, he's drawn out the geometry which you can get from it. As it so happens, in this geometry, the octagonal, you get north, winter, so all these different settings towards the celestial events. But the interesting thing about this one, and he appreciates it, this, that if those stones weren't standing, and there was nothing there but the earth, by having Guy Underwood's complete earth energy diagram of the site, you could actually come up with that geometry without a stone being there. And he's tried it and he said, this is fantastic. He said, I thought the stones only were sort of conforming to this, but it's the earth energies that are making the stones conform to the earth energy patterns, or the masons are conforming. But in so doing, they're coming up with a fantastic geometry. And that's just one example of the Stonehenge geometry. Here's another example from Devon, of what we call the marked stones. I've only shown one. But what you have is a complex little system of earth energies coming in. And what they've done is they've picked 2 stones, and they've marked right along the top here, they've marked down the side, they've marked along here. And what they're saying is, again, will somebody in the future understand that we're leaving you clues galore, and here's another one of them. But they're leaving these all over the place, and Guy was finding them, actually. This one, Jeff? Now here's the site at Woodhenge. Woodhenge was a Neolithic wooden cathedral which consisted of 6 series of posts, and the building was supposed to be like a cone coming out of the ground almost. And what we're showing here is that all the posts have been set on what the Guy calls the chain circles. These are very easy to dowse and very powerful. So the whole ground plan was based initially on the chain circles. So again, they're fitting in with the earth energy. And by the way, these things have never been published before. The BSD is looking at them for the first time. Here's another, water lines. Now look again. Part only. He's got other ones on it. If you notice these so-called water lines, every single post hole is being traversed by a water line. This one, for example, is being traversed by about 7. But every single one is conforming to the water line. And water, ladies and gentlemen, would never take on this pattern and take in every post hole. And there are scores and scores of post holes on that particular diagram. Next one, Jim. Again, what we found at Woodhenge is the secondary halos, separating the sacred from the profane. And there you have them there. And again, that one was published in the pattern of the past, but the rest he took to the grave with him. Here's one of the arc patterns at Woodhenge in the what he called the no moon period here. He did this in 1956. There's a beautiful series of arc patterns. And again, very, very easy to dowse. Now the next moon period, this would vanish, and then you get the next arc pattern. And there's another one equally spectacular, all the arc systems. But can you imagine, we're only showing you some of the Woodhenge diagrams, but can you imagine all of these diagrams superimposed on each other? That's what they really are. But Guy had the ability to sort of tune in only to the arcs, and everything, all else is out. And he found the 2 arc system, and then tune into something else. But I used to go there in the early days of my dowsing, and it just confused me completely. And here, just to the west of Stonehenge, you have the cuckoo stone. And the cuckoo stone is interesting insofar as, as a dowsing exercise, it's something else. You've got, first of all, one coil, geospiral, with 49 coils, then you've got the second one, which he hasn't shown, then you've got the third one. So you've got 3 coils, each with 49, or 3 geospirals, each with 49 coils, and each being made up of aquastats with 12 lines per coil, basically. And again, that's something else to dowse. But notice how from each geospiral, you've got the energy swing towards Woodhenge, another towards Woodhenge, and the other one towards Durrington Walls, which was a henge just next to this one, next to the Woodhenge. Now, what we're seeing here is William Stukeley's drawing of the Avebury Temple complex. And this was the Neolithic world wonder. What you had basically was the main henge, ditch and bank, 2 circles within it, major circles by any standard. Then you had the Kennett Stone Avenue, which went for 1.5 miles to the sanctuary, which is down here. And the tail of the serpent went right out here, again 1.5 miles distance, and the distance between there and there was about 3 miles. So nothing like that had ever been attempted before. And John Aubrey, the 17th century antiquarian, had a love affair with this one and with Stonehenge, and he compared this to Stonehenge as a great cathedral to a parish church. And the parish church, of course, was Stonehenge. But hold it there. But the interesting thing we're going to look at is that. There's so much to look at here, we haven't got the time. But focus your mind on that, Silbury Hill, because that is the focal point of the whole region. And before they started to even consider that, they started work on the hill. And they worked on the hill for approximately 65 years. It took them 100 years to build. And they worked on that for 65 years before they started work on there. And we'll find out the reason why in the next slide. And this is mind-blowing, is the next one. Again, it's another example of the measure of the man. That's Silbury Hill. Again, never been seen by other eyes. Now, there's Silbury Hill in all its glory now. Guy was 75 when he took on that daunting task. But if that was on the flat, and I said to any one of you, try and sort that out, it would be a hell of a task to map it all out in a print of paper with all the reference points that you need, and so on and so forth. But he's 75 when he did that. And remember that what you're looking at is a conical hill. And when I walk up that hill once, I'm knackered. How many times did you have to traverse? Take any one line, for example. Take that single line. Or take that one, for example. How many times must you have to traverse the hill to try and get his reference points? And what he used was hundreds and hundreds of little stakes and miles and miles and miles of string. They should map it all out like that. So I'll leave it to your imagination to find out how many times you could have ascended and descended that one. But again, Silbury Hill could have been placed there or there, but no, they chose that point for Silbury Hill because that was going to be the focal point for the whole 3-mile-long temple. That was the power point of the region. And also the first thing that they do is to find out where's the power point, and then they go after it. But more, it's also that you can't see it here, but there's the geospiral, which is hardly visible, which denotes that not only is it over the power point of the region, but it's over a blind spring. So it's 2 points associated with a blind spring and then the power point of the region. Now, the construction of the Silbury Hill, as you know, internally it's a conical pyramid which is layered with organic and inorganic material. And there's various theories abound about it. That was it an orgone generator in the manner of William Reich, who made an orgone generator using exactly the same principle. I think Reich maybe has been imitating a 5,000-year-old technology. And this, I think, we're witnessing is orgone generation on a massive scale. Because 1, they choose the power point, 2, they choose the blind spring. And the thing about the blind spring is that it will be very active in gamma ray activity. Because the cosmic particles coming in to disintegrate the atoms, and up come the cosmic rays, together with alpha particles and beta particles. So what better place if you want to generate orgone energy than Silbury Hill? Now here's another example of Merlin's Mound. And again, this is contemporary with Silbury Hill. It's much smaller than Silbury Hill, but it's a big construct by any standard. And what we can see again is that they selected that particular spot and no other because it's on a 7-coiled geospiral, meaning again, it's over a blind spring. So there's another example of just at the Marlborough College. And notice how the energy feeds right around the buildings and way down the main road, etc. So that's Silbury Hill's twin. Now here's just an example of part of the Kennett Stone Avenue. Just a part of it. So if you notice that, interestingly, the stones are being set by aquastats, which are reticulating. And again, this side. And then some of the energies come in and they loop around and they move on and loop around here. And notice how the water line runs right along the center. And Guy once said in the pattern of the past, that moles like to burrow along water lines. And once when I took a class, we were busy following this water line right along the centre, and sure enough we found 75 little molehills, all exactly on the water line. So exactly as Guy said, they love water lines and they follow them. But they're not following water, they're following the energy. It's the energy that attracts them. Now what I'm going to show you is one of the diagrams from Hamish Miller's The Sun and the Serpent. And we'll find out why. We're going to look at this. But this again is on a par with Guy Underwood to survey a region like that. But what we're looking at is the Michael line and the Mary line doing a sinuous ballet right around the region. But what they're doing, if you notice, as they go around, at Windmill Hill, they're crossing to make what you call a node point, which in the Chinese feng shui geomancy is a very, very special place, sacred place. And Mary goes right around the countryside of Winterbourne Mountain, goes through the church dedicated to St. Mary, come in, they both join together at the henge. Then they run conjointly right through, and Mary parts with Michael at this point. She goes through Silbury Hill, Swallowhead Spring, West Kennett Barrow, and down to the sanctuary. Michael comes charging down here, the avenue, and again he crosses with Mary right at the sanctuary, meaning that's a very special place. And again, the sanctuary was selected. The people who were living on Windmill Hill, 1,000 years before this was ever thought of, they built the sanctuary, and it shows where Michael and Mary are crossing. So they're practicing feng shui way back in the Neolithic times. And the main reason why I'm showing you that, and I emphasize the sanctuary, is because of this. Now again, this is only one of Guy Underwood's diagrams of the sanctuary. And what you're looking at here, ladies and gentlemen, is a fissure system, fissures in the ground. So apart from having Michael and Mary doing the thing there, you have 51 fissures going right around here, and the fissures are making all sorts of other patterns. And these fissures, by the way, again, are very easy to dowse, and everybody coming out this afternoon with us will have you dowsing the fissure systems. They're very easy. Now what struck me was, in one of Guy's notes, he said that right along the West Kennett Avenue, there were 2 fissure systems running with it on the outside. I thought, well, that's interesting, 1.5 miles of a fissure system. And then when I picked this one up, I thought, interesting, more fissure systems. Yes. But then what I looked at very carefully was, here is where the avenue, the West Kennett Avenue, is coming in to join the sanctuary. Now if you notice, this hit me very forcibly. Here are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fissure systems. So this began to give me a clue as to what is going on here. But Michael's coming down here, and he's forming a node with Mary, and Mary's coming up this way. And she passes through the tube line on the other side of the road. So here we have the Mary current forming the node with Michael, down here. And what I found that there's 2 fissure systems running within Mary, and one on either side of it. I thought, this is interesting. So then, one day I had the opportunity to go up to Norfolk to make a film. That approached Hamish to make the film, but he's too busy on his other research. So I said, well, you do it. So of course I'd never been to Norfolk in my life. First we had to go up there and find the damn things, and then follow them right through to Norfolk on the coastline. But it gave me the opportunity to check the fissure systems, and sure enough, I found them up in Norfolk. Then asked the Devon dowsers to see if they could pick up the Michael and the Mary line, and sure enough, what they found was the fissure systems are running with them also. Now in Hamish's book, he mentions that simultaneously the churches on the Tor, Glastonbury Tor, and the St. Michael Mount, were both destroyed on the same day by an earthquake, which meant they were on a fault line. Now, just the evidence I've got so far, following these fissure systems, is that they might be running the entire length of the Michael and the Mary line across England. But that requires a hell of a lot more research than what I've done so far. But if they are following fissure systems, then it means like electric currents, what they're doing is they're following the line of least resistance. That's their preference rather than going for solid rocks. Just a theory at the moment. But that's interesting. Now here again you have Bosco Hill Circle. And again you find 2 diagrams. Energies are looping in this direction and forming little enclosures for them. Also you've got on this other diagram, of course, you've made it separate. Again, you've got the enclosure systems. And then, of course, you've got the geospiral, meaning it's over Blind Spring again. So once again, we find that the surveyors in ancient times would always look for the blind springs in water. What I've shown you here is the Mary current as she comes in. Then this is the stone which Hamish points out in his book. It's slanted like that. It's like pointing in that direction. So Mary comes in and for some reason gives an absolute U-turn or a big turn and goes off in that direction. And many people thought that this might have been vertical at one time, but then went like that with subsidence. But in Hamish's book, it's more likely or not that it's pointing the way like a giant finger, saying it's just turned and it's going that way with an indicator. Now, not only were the monuments following the geodetic systems, but here you've got this Stonehenge giant. There he is, in all his rudeness. There's the earth energy system that Guy discovered. Also connected with the fort up here, by the way. It's working at time. Oh, there it is. So even the fort is laid out, if you notice, by the aquastat lines, setting the details of it. But that was, they come down here, and then they form this figure, which superimposed on this one gives you that. Now the Stonehenge giant then is conforming to the earth energies. So what the heck's happening? Is this earth force that counts in 3s and 7s? Is it also a notice? There's a doodle at times. You know, there's a doodle. Or which came first? In other words, if you do that, do you then create that? Or do you have that, then you create that based on it? Which came first, the chicken or the egg? 2 minutes. 2 minutes, right. Here's the famous white horse at Uffington. Again, you have the horse, there you have the energy pattern, the aquastat, and they're the one superimposed on the other. So which came first? This proves which came first, the next one, I think. Because at that site, there's far more energy than just what we've seen on the first one. Here you have the total energy package. You have the horse that exists now in its Picasso-like form, and now you have another more conventional horse. And you can actually dowse for that. Jeff and I did this with a group of people about 4 or 5 weeks ago. Actually dowsed outside of a conventional horse. It was never used, but they used that one. So that means that is existing. So maybe the earth force is a doodler. And lastly, here's the detail of the head of the horse. There's the conventional head, and here you have the peak, or the one that we see now. And the eye, by the way, is over a blind spring with 7 coils. So even for that, we're looking for the blind springs to make the eyeball. Okay, another minute?
1 more minute.
1 more minute.
And we can get some questions.
Radio. Now here's a typical example of the Masonic design canons. They ignore the PowerPoint of the church completely. It just sways through the church. But what they do with the first design canon was they lined up the axis on the reticulating aquastat. So there it has been lined up. This altar and that altar has been formed by loops. The spire